Hey guys, tonight we're not staying in some haunted Victorian house or hiking into an abandoned Cold War bunker. Nope. Tonight, we're going somewhere quieter. Too quiet, really. You're about to step into the stillness of a 12th century Korean forest monastery. No electricity, no warm showers, no late night snacks. Just the sound of your breath, the rustle of wind through pines, and a bell that tolls long before dawn. You're not going to like it. The monks here train in silence, live in stillness, and eat with more discipline than you've ever seen in your life. You, with your phone in your hand and half a coffee still in your system, are about to find out what it means to really disconnect. You probably won't survive this night, but if you do, something in you might change. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and the local time in the comments. I always love seeing where you're listening from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're standing at the edge of a pine forest. The sun's nearly down, just a dull smear of orange behind the black ridge of trees. The air smells like damp moss and wood smoke. No roads, no carts, no sound but the wind threading through branches and a crow with strong opinions in the distance. Your feet crunch on gravel as you follow the narrow path inward. It's barely more than 2 feet wide, overgrown and soft underfoot, and you're pretty sure no one's swept it in centuries. The forest gets thicker. Pines tower overhead like judges in robes, their bark blackened with age. There's something deeply indifferent about these trees, as if they've seen thousands come and go, and you're just another passing breath. You finally see it. A tall wooden gate with no lock, no guard, just 2 weathered beams etched with Chinese characters, half faded with rain and time. The sign reads, "Enter empty." Not helpful, not comforting, just cryptic. You duck under the lintel and enter the temple grounds. It's not what you expect. No grand buildings or painted dragons, just a scattering of low wooden halls, each with grey tiled roofs that slope like tired shoulders. The walls are simple timber and mud plaster, with a few torn rice paper windows fluttering in the wind. Stone lanterns dot the courtyard, unlit. A small bell tower leans slightly to one side like it's been bowing for 500 years. A novice monk appears silently, barefoot, face blank. He bows deeply, then gestures for you to follow. You try to ask where your room is, but he just keeps walking. Talking is off the menu now, apparently. You follow him down a side corridor. The floor creaks. Spiders live here. Many. One dangles by a single thread as you pass, probably judging you. At a small side hall, he slides open a rice paper door. Inside is a 6x6 foot cubicle, with a thin straw mat, a folded blanket, and nothing else. No chair, no candles, no window. Just one hook on the wall for your robe. You turn to ask a question, but the novice has already vanished. There's a dull dong in the distance, the bell. You step outside again and realize the entire monastery is already moving. Monks in grey robes shuffle across the courtyard, heads bowed, hands tucked into sleeves. Not one is talking. Not one glances your way. It's like watching a silent river made of human intention. They form rows under a massive pine and bow deeply. Then again, then again. Kneeling, standing, palms up, palms together, bowing until your knees cry for mercy and your lower back writes a resignation letter. Here's your first fun historical fact. Korean Seon Buddhism, related to Japanese Zen, developed in part as a reaction to the elaborate rituals of earlier schools. These monks aren't here for incense and gold statues. They're here to break themselves open with silence, breath, and physical repetition. And here's a weird tidbit. During the Goryeo period, it wasn't uncommon for aristocrats to temporarily enter monasteries to purify karma, often after a political blunder. Yep, royal screw-ups were followed by mandatory spiritual retreats. Think of it as medieval crisis management. Historians still argue whether the most remote temples, like the one you're in, were ever truly meant for outsiders. Some believe these hidden monasteries were deliberately unwelcoming, isolated for the sake of intensity. Others argue they were open sanctuaries, a last refuge for those seeking real change. Either way, you're in deep now. You bow. Again. Again. As the sky turns purple-black, the cold settles in. It's the kind that seeps up through your socks and into your bones. You wonder if you'll be offered dinner, or if enlightenment is supposed to make you forget you're hungry. Another bell rings. The monks rise and file silently toward a low hall with paper doors. You follow. Inside, candlelight flickers dimly. You're handed a wooden bowl and a spoon, no tray, no options. You sit cross-legged on a mat as a pot of rice gruel is passed down the line. No one speaks. No one chews loudly. One guy, 2 spots down, makes a slurping sound and gets the kind of side-eye that could fossilize a squirrel. You try to eat slowly, mindfully, like everyone else. But it tastes like boiled dust. Just rice, water, and maybe regret. Your stomach wants to rebel. Your mouth misses salt. A single monk at the front claps twice. Everyone freezes. Then, in eerie unison, they all lift their bowls and give a brief whispered chant. Something about gratitude and non-attachment. You pretend to mumble along. Good luck with that. Afterward, the bowls are rinsed by you. No kitchen staff. Everyone scrubs their own dish in icy water from a wooden basin. You try not to drop yours. There are no replacements. As you step outside, the stars are out. There's no moon, just a billion points of cold fire above the trees. The forest groans faintly in the wind, and for a moment, you wonder if you made a huge mistake. Then again, you're here now. You're not sure what time it is, but time doesn't really matter here. Time doesn't tick. It flows like incense smoke, slow, looping, and kind of impossible to follow. What matters is rhythm, and the rhythm just shifted. A senior monk gestures at you from across the courtyard. He's old, cloaked in the same ash-grey robe as the rest, but there's something regal in the way he moves, deliberate, like each step has consequences. He doesn't speak, but his expression is very clear. You're not done. You follow him, bare feet brushing gravel, into a narrow hallway that smells faintly of cedar and boiled turnips. At the end is a small room, barely bigger than a closet, with cubby holes on the wall. He points to your boots and your sack of belongings. They go in the cubby. All of it. Even your little cloth-wrapped snack from the village, especially that. Then he nods toward a folded robe on a shelf. You're expected to change. So, you do. The robe is coarse, scratchy, and the colour of wet stone. It smells like vinegar and incense and somehow memory. It fits badly, as if tailored for someone slightly more ascetic than you. And suddenly you look like them, at least from the neck down. You walk back into the corridor, now barefoot and bareheaded, and the temperature hits differently. The floor feels alive. Every creak, every cold patch of tile, every whisper of your own movements suddenly matters. This is your first true lesson here. You're not supposed to be comfortable, and not just physically. Your ego's already kicking and screaming. No phone, no status, no cool shoes or hey guys smile. Just you, your breath, and the awkward weight of trying not to exist too loudly. You trail the elder monk into another wing of the temple, this one darker, older, almost leaning with age. It smells like wax and damp parchment. You glance up and see faded murals of bodhisattvas, their faces serene, their eyes half-lidded like they know something you don't, which, spoiler alert, they absolutely do. He gestures again, and you enter a small chamber, 8 mats arranged in a square, all already occupied. The monks are sitting zazen, back straight, legs folded into lotus or half-lotus, hands resting in their laps like fragile birds. You sit on the only empty mat, or at least you try. Folding your legs this way is not natural. Your hip protests, your knee gives a little warning pop, and your back is already regretting your life choices. You look around, hoping someone else is struggling. Nope. They are statues. Breathing statues. Then, the bell. A single, soft chime. Not a gong this time. This bell is smaller, suspended on a thread of silence, and it lands in your ears like a snowflake. No one moves. You're supposed to follow your breath now. Inhale, exhale. That's it. No thinking, no analysing. No wondering if anyone liked your last Instagram post from 3 days ago that now feels like it happened in another life. Here's a historical anchor for you. This type of meditation, Seon, is based on direct insight into the nature of the mind. It isn't about chanting, reciting sutras, or visualizing deities, just sitting, just breathing, just being. Think of it as extreme mental minimalism, invented centuries before Silicon Valley tried to sell you mindfulness apps. And here's your quirky tidbit of the hour. In some Korean temples, monks practiced a ritual called jiwa. where they'd walk silently behind meditating novices and slap them with a flat stick. Not out of punishment, but to awaken them from drowsiness. You're lucky tonight's crew seems more gentle, for now. Historians still argue whether Seon practice in the 1100s was as rigorous as its later documented forms. Some say it was already strict and silent. Others suggest it was a bit more flexible, especially in mountain temples where survival sometimes outranked doctrine. But in this monastery, tucked deep in the pines, discipline is non-negotiable. After what feels like an hour, but might be 20 minutes, a senior monk slowly rises. He walks a slow circuit behind the group. His sandals whisper across the wooden floor. He stops behind someone, lightly adjusts their posture, then moves on. You hold your breath as he nears you. He pauses. Uh-oh. A gentle tap on your shoulder. Your spine straightens like a scared cat. He moves on. You have now been silently corrected. Welcome to monastery life. After the session ends, signalled by another soft bell, the monks bow in unison. You try to follow, but your legs are asleep and you collapse sideways like a bag of rice. No one laughs, which almost makes it worse. You hobble out into the night air, legs jelly, brain buzzing. This place strips you down. Not violently, but persistently. Gently, like water-shaping stone. It's not trying to impress you, it's trying to erase you. You head toward the outer courtyard where a few monks are gathered. No one speaks, of course. They just stand, hands tucked, eyes up toward the dark sky where stars are starting to punch through the velvet. You realise this is the closest thing they have to entertainment. A breeze brushes the pine needles overhead, and they hiss like rain. Then you see it. A shooting star. Quick. Bright. Gone. No one gasps. No one points. They just continue breathing. You start to feel smaller, but in a good way. Like maybe being a speck isn't the worst thing. Still, you're exhausted. Another novice finds you and bows. You bow back, probably too deeply, but enthusiasm counts for something, right? He leads you back to your bare little room. The floor's still cold, the mat's still thin, but it's yours, or at least it's where you'll try to sleep. You lie down in silence. No pillows, no ambient playlist, just wind, wood creaks, and your heartbeat. And the creeping realization you've only just begun. You wake up confused, because technically you never really fell asleep. At best, you entered a kind of semi-conscious paralysis, your body motionless on the straw mat, your mind bouncing between strange dreams of chanting statues and bottomless teacups. And then, just as you thought you were drifting off for real, gong. One hit. Deep. Long. It echoes through the wooden beams and into your bones. You open your eyes, but everything's still dark. Not early morning. Not even late night. This is a time of day so unnatural, it doesn't belong to anyone. You check your non-existent watch. Of course, you have no watch. You gave that up yesterday. Well, a few hours ago. Time is now measured in bells and aching joints. You stumble upright, brush off straw, and fumble into your robe. Outside, the night air slaps you awake. Cold and sharp, like the forest is actively judging you for thinking sleep was part of the plan. A few shadowy figures drift silently through the courtyard. Monks moving like ghosts across gravel. You follow, bleary-eyed, through the side gate and down a long stone path lit only by moonlight, and a single lantern swinging in the wind. Your feet are bare again. You forgot slippers were optional, but the gravel isn't. Every step reminds you of your soft city upbringing. The group stops outside a small meditation hall. You enter last. There are no candles, just pale moonlight through paper windows. The room smells like pine resin and human breath. No one speaks. No one yawns. They just sit, instantly, effortlessly, like breathing statues. You try to mimic them, again folding your legs, again failing to look serene. But hey, you're upright. Progress. This is the midnight meditation. Technically, it's called midnight meditation, but it's closer to 1:30 a.m. The goal? To train your mind when your body wants nothing more than to shut down. To sit in stillness when everything biological is begging for sleep. You're supposed to count your breaths, not out loud, just silently, with laser focus. 1, 2, 3. By 15, your thoughts drift to cheeseburgers. Here's a historical tidbit to ground you. Buddhist monks in 12th century Korea often followed the Yebel and Chamseon disciplines, prescribed cycles of chanting and meditation, including night sittings that began in total darkness. These weren't optional spiritual extras. These were daily requirements. Miss one, that's a silent shaming. 2, you might be asked to leave, or at least reconsider your life as a future Buddha. Quirky side note. Some monasteries, especially those up in the colder mountains, used icicle formations in water basins as rough timekeepers during night sessions. Once it was light enough to see the reflection of your own nose in the water, that was dawn. Sort of beautiful, sort of horrifying. Historians still debate how strictly these schedules were enforced during the Goryeo dynasty. Some argue that spiritual rigour was softened at smaller temples, especially during winter months. Others believe the schedule never changed, because the path to enlightenment doesn't care if you have seasonal depression. You try again to count your breath, but the silence is so loud. Your ears pick up everything. Someone's stomach growling 2 mats away, a foot shifting on the wood, the wind whispering through a cracked panel. You realise that peaceful is not what you're experiencing. This silence is aggressive. It doesn't soothe you, it presses on you, like an invisible weight across your chest. You try closing your eyes tighter. Bad idea. Now you feel like you're falling, floating. You snap them open. Still here, still grounded. Probably. Then comes the real challenge. Your mind starts talking, loudly. Why are you here? What are you trying to prove? You paid how much to sleep on a mat and be judged by a guy who hasn't blinked in 2 days? You breathe in. You breathe out. Still not Buddha. Another monk shifts. You seize the opportunity to stretch your back slightly. Subtle enough to avoid scandal, you hope. The session continues in that same suspended nothingness. You lose track of time, breath, and possibly sanity. But there's also something strange happening. Between bouts of mental rebellion and leg cramps, there's a flicker, just a flicker, of quiet. Not around you, in you, like your brain stopped yelling for 1 precious second. Then it starts again, of course, complaining about your hip and asking if lunch is ever coming. But still, that second happened, and that's a big deal here. The bell rings again, soft, final, no applause, no relief. Just slow movement as everyone bows and stands. You follow suit. And this time, you don't fall over. Outside, the night has shifted. The stars are fainter, and there's a pale blue smear at the horizon. Technically still night. Spiritually, morning has started. No one says anything as you file back toward the main hall. But the rhythm is stronger now. You're falling into it, a little. Like your body is learning a new dance it didn't agree to but can't help remembering. Back in your room, you lie down again, not to sleep but to wait for the next bell. You wrap the thin blanket over your legs, you listen to the wind, you try to stay still. This time, you almost do. The next bell comes gently, almost mercifully, a single tone, just as the sky begins to lighten into a soft steel grey. You haven't really slept again, but your body has at least stopped fighting. It's given up, surrendered. You're officially a monk now, if only by exhaustion. You rise slowly. Your legs creak like old floorboards, and your neck crackles as you tilt your head side to side. You try not to groan. This is, after all, a place where sound is sacred and should only be used for bells, chants, or intense internal suffering. The other monks are already moving. No one runs, no one rushes. They walk with that eerie, fluid stillness, like they know there's no point in hurrying toward enlightenment. You follow them across the courtyard, where the grass is tipped in frost. The air smells like wet pine needles and yesterday's breath. The hall you're heading to is low and wide, with an open front and a wooden floor rubbed smooth by centuries of footsteps. Inside, the mats are already laid out. You sit cross-legged. There is a brief moment of pause, then the food comes. Breakfast. It's barley again. This time with a thin miso broth and 3 pickled vegetables, one of which smells like fermented regret. You eat it in silence, eyes down, trying not to react to the salt slap of that first crunchy bite. The monks eat without emotion, spooning food into their mouths with the detachment of philosophers. You do your best imitation of someone whose taste buds have been spiritually silenced. And here's where it gets interesting. Each bowl has to be cleaned with food. That's right. You pour hot water into your rice bowl, swish the last grains around, drink it like soup, then wipe the bowl clean with a slice of pickled radish. You eat the radish. Why? Because nothing is wasted, not even the water. It's called balbugongyang, and it's been practiced for over 1,000 years. This isn't just eating. This is a ritual of gratitude and awareness. Even the leftovers have a purpose. Even the bitterest flavors deserve a bow. Fun fact: the original Korean Seon monks adopted this frugal, intentional eating style to combat the rising excess of temple culture during the late unified Silla and early Goryeo periods. Too many lavish feasts, too much drama with rich patrons. So the forest monks rebelled, with plain gruel and militant humility. And for your quirky tidbit, some strict monasteries believed that even the sound of your eating could reveal your state of mind. A loud slurp meant spiritual chaos. A gentle chew, inner clarity. You chewing that rubbery root vegetable like it owes you money? Not enlightened. Historians still debate whether all temples followed these strict dining rituals, or if some, particularly those in coastal regions, were a bit more relaxed. Fishing villages tended to have a looser interpretation of detachment from worldly pleasures, especially when mackerel was in season. After breakfast, it's time for work. You don't get a nap, you don't get reflection time, you get a broom, a handmade one. The bristles are long and uneven, tied with hemp string, and it's already been used for at least a decade. You're not sure if it's more brush or artifact. Your task? Sweep the stone steps leading to the upper pagoda. At first, you think, oh, sweeping, that's easy. You poor naive creature. You quickly discover that these stairs are not flat. They're ancient, uneven, covered in moss, and there are roughly 100 of them. Also, the broom is ceremonial in its effectiveness. It mostly just pushes dust around like a whispery suggestion. Still, you sweep and sweep. The handle digs into your palms, your robe keeps slipping off one shoulder, the wind won't cooperate. A squirrel throws a pine cone at you from above. You sweep anyway. It's not about cleaning, of course. It's about being present. With each stroke, you're meant to observe your thoughts, your breath, your body. You're not removing dust from stone. You're removing attachment from the mind. Or at least that's what you try to tell yourself while shivering. Nearby, another monk rakes gravel into perfectly symmetrical lines. Every movement is exact. Every curve is intentional. The design is gone by morning, of course, but it doesn't matter. Impermanence is part of the deal. You glance at your crooked broom lines. They look like someone tried to draw enlightenment while sneezing. You keep going. Eventually, a novice comes to retrieve you. No words, just a small bow. You follow, broom in hand, arms buzzing from the work. You're led to the washing basin, an outdoor stone trough filled with icy spring water. Time to rinse the broom, and your face, and your hands, and possibly your sins. You splash your face, and it's like getting slapped by a snowstorm. Your skin tightens. Your breath catches. You suddenly feel more awake than you ever have in your life. Maybe this is the real morning coffee. As you dry your face with the sleeve of your robe, you realize something. No one has asked you anything today. Not your name, not your thoughts, not how you slept. You haven't spoken a single word since yesterday, and yet, somehow, you are entirely seen. This place has no need for small talk. It has no need for your stories. It looks through them, past them, into something quieter. The cold wind rises again. The pine trees whisper overhead. You look up and, for the first time, you don't feel the need to fill the silence with anything. Not even your thoughts. You head back toward the main hall, damp sleeves sticking to your arms, broom still in hand like some medieval badge of humility. A line of monks glides past you. None look up. None smile. You're still the outsider here, robe or not, but now at least you're an outsider with blistered palms and barley breath. A novice collects the broom with a respectful nod and disappears, like everyone here does. Quietly, and usually before you can ask a single question. You take a few tentative steps toward your room, but another monk appears. He gestures with a tilt of his head toward yet another hall. You follow. Resistance feels pointless now. This building is different, smaller, darker. The door is barely 5 feet high, so you stoop. Inside, there's nothing but a long hallway of paper walls, each hiding a monk's cell, and now, it's your turn. He slides one door open. It's just like the first cell you saw, but with something new. A thin cushion for sitting, and a worn book made of folded rice paper, resting on a tiny wooden desk. No chairs, of course, just the cushion and you. The monk bows and leaves. You kneel. The cushion sighs under you. The book is handwritten, black ink on fading yellow. The characters are unfamiliar but beautiful. You're not expected to read them. You're expected to copy them. There's a blank scroll beside it, a brush, a pot of ink. This is your practice now. You dip the brush in ink and make your first stroke. It's terrible, wobbly, too thick. The brush skips. The paper warps slightly. You stare at it with regret. The next stroke is worse. The third looks like a confused tree. You have no idea what you're writing, but that's not the point. This isn't calligraphy. This is transcription meditation, and it was a cornerstone of many Goryeo-era monasteries. To copy a sutra is to imprint the teaching onto the body through the hand. You're not learning about Buddhism, you're living it, one shaky brushstroke at a time. Quirky little fact. Monks in this era sometimes believed that even a poorly written sutra still had merit, as long as it was done with sincerity. Some even requested to be buried with the scrolls they copied themselves, like a kind of karmic receipt. Historians still argue whether this ritual was purely spiritual, or if it also served a more pragmatic function, replicating texts in a world before printing presses. Some scholars suggest that low-ranking monks were often assigned to transcription, not for enlightenment, but because the temple needed spare copies of the Diamond Sutra. You, however, are definitely not here for publishing. After an hour, maybe more, you realise you've only copied a single line. Your back is sore, your fingers are smudged with ink. You've lost count of how many times you accidentally sighed out loud. The silence makes every sound feel personal. The scratch of your sleeve, the gentle clack of the brush against the pot. Even your breath seems louder than it should be. You pause, you breathe, you dip the brush again. Another stroke, and another. At some point you forget what the strokes even mean. Your body moves, but your mind softens. It's not blank exactly, more like suspended. You're no longer trying to be quiet. You just are. Then, without warning, the bell rings again. Not a big one, just a small chime, like a reminder. You put the brush down, your fingers are stained, and there's a little ink on your sleeve that you definitely weren't supposed to get there, but no one's checking your work, no one's grading you. The scroll stays on the desk, a testament to your best effort, and your worst handwriting. Outside the cell, the hallway seems even quieter. You feel oddly exposed, like the act of copying the sutra peeled back something you didn't know you were wearing. You step outside and the sun is high now. Late morning probably. The courtyard is flooded with that clear, bright light that makes everything look sharper. Edges of roofs, the sheen of wet stone, even the swaying tips of the bamboo grove beyond the temple wall. You walk toward it instinctively. There's no sign, no instruction, but something in you wants green, wants movement. The bamboo grove is barely 100 feet wide, but the wind moves through it like it owns the place. The stalks knock and sway and whisper, and you realize this is the first loud thing you've heard in hours, and it's beautiful. You sit under one of the trees, no mat, no bell, no one watching, just you, the wind, and 1,000 thin trunks that rise like thoughts, before falling silent again. This is where it hits you. The silence of this place isn't just an absence of noise, it's a mirror, and mirrors, as you know, can be very uncomfortable. They show you your face, but also your restlessness, your impatience, your bad jokes, your ego pretending it's cool with all this when actually it's 2 rice grains away from screaming. You sit with that, for a while, maybe longer than you expected. Eventually a bell rings faintly in the distance. You rise, you dust yourself off, and for once your mind doesn't immediately start narrating your next move. You just walk. Maybe you're not failing here after all. Back in the courtyard, the pace has changed again. You hear the faint dong of the main bell tower, followed by 3 short chimes. This isn't the call for food, for chores, or for copying texts. This is the signal for afternoon meditation, and this one's different. This one walks. A line of monks forms like mist curling through the pine trees, bare feet, hands folded just below the navel. No one speaks, but everyone moves, slowly, with a rhythm that feels impossibly serene. You fall in behind a novice monk. He's maybe 16, maybe 60. Hard to tell when everyone looks like they've stopped aging at quiet wisdom. You start walking. The pace is glacial. You want to take 3 steps for every one they take, but you don't. You can't. The rule is simple. Match the pace. 1 foot, stop. breathe. 1 foot. Stop. Breathe. Walking meditation, or kinhin, wasn't just a Japanese Zen thing. Korean Seon temples practiced it too, especially during long retreats. Monks believed motion helped circulate the insight generated during sitting meditation. In other words, enlightenment doesn't just happen on a cushion, it walks beside you. You pass through the main gate, down a path lined with gnarled trees and wet stones. Each footfall lands softer now. Your toes are learning to listen. You begin to notice things. The exact squish of moss underfoot, the crinkle of a dry leaf, the strange way the breeze seems to speak in syllables. For a moment your mind goes quiet. Then, predictably, it kicks back in. Am I doing this right? Should my hands be higher? Is that the same squirrel from earlier? And then, whack, not on you, on the monk ahead. One of the seniors has gently tapped his shoulder with a long flat stick. The monk nods. No flinching, no embarrassment. It's not punishment, it's a reminder. Be here. This practice stick is called a keisaku. In Korean temples, it's sometimes used during walking meditation when someone visibly drifts. You'd think it's rude, but here, it's compassionate correction. Like your thoughts getting a post-it note. Hey, you left the moment. You continue walking. Step, breath, step, breath. The forest opens up to a small clearing, gravel, perfectly raked. The line continues its slow, deliberate circle. You're now in full monk cosplay, silent, slow, and deeply unsure if your foot is making too much noise. You remember to breathe. This is harder than it looks. Every part of you wants to distract, to narrate, to plan dinner or replay that one thing you said 3 years ago. But here, those thoughts feel like static, unnecessary, like trying to hum over a symphony. Historical moment incoming. During the 12th century, Korea was undergoing major cultural and political change. The Goryeo dynasty was thriving, but the Buddhist establishment was being challenged by rising Confucian values. Some forest monasteries doubled down, isolating themselves, deepening their practices, insisting on silence as a form of resistance. While cities argued, these monks listened, to wind, to breath, to the space between thoughts. Quirky side note: there were occasional reports, especially in mountain temples, of monks walking meditation so deeply focused that they unknowingly circled for hours without realizing the sun had moved. One story tells of a monk who walked until he collapsed, only to wake and claim he'd briefly left the wheel of rebirth. Skeptical? Sure. But try this walk without getting bored, and then we'll talk. The line completes the loop. One more pass through the pines, back toward the temple walls. You feel your calves burning from restraint, your spine straight from effort, and then it ends. The monks stop at the bell tower. One novice bows and rings the small bell once. The line disperses, not into chaos, but into perfectly calm drift. Everyone goes where they need to go. No one speaks. It's like watching a tree shed its leaves. You, however, are left standing there. You don't know where you're supposed to be. But something in you doesn't panic this time. You just wait. Eventually, a young monk gestures toward the rear garden. You follow him down a narrow stone path where vegetable beds grow in tidy rows. Radish, cabbage, maybe some garlic. And in the centre, a small wooden bench. He bows slightly. You sit. Sunlight warms the back of your neck. A bee hums past your ear. Somewhere, water trickles. No instruction, no bell. Just a bench in a garden. You don't do anything. You don't try to meditate. You just sit. And here's the strange thing. It feels like enough. The sun climbs higher, casting shadows across the earth. A leaf tumbles lazily through the air and lands beside your foot. You think, maybe for the first time today, that you could stay like this. That this moment is not a bridge to anything else. Not a means. Just an end. And for once you don't ruin it by thinking too hard. You stay there for a while. The bee returns. You don't flinch. The wind picks up again, but now it sounds less like whispering and more like breathing. Maybe it was never the trees. Maybe it was you all along. Eventually the spell breaks. Not rudely, but gently, like a dream fading before you're quite ready to let it go. A distant bell sounds, soft and low. You rise without being told. Your legs don't protest as much this time. Maybe they've given up. Or maybe they're learning too. You follow the sound, your feet now finding paths without hesitation. The monastery isn't just a place anymore. It's a rhythm you're beginning to memorize. You re-enter the main hall. No one speaks. Everyone is already sitting. You take your place. Same mat, same breath, same silence. But this time, the silence feels different. It's not empty. It's full. This is breath meditation again. Seated, unmoving. The kind of stillness that once made you twitch now feels familiar, maybe even comforting. You begin to notice your inhale, the pause at the top, the slow, steady exhale. Inhale, pause, exhale, and again. There are no clocks here, no teachers snapping their fingers or apps rewarding you with streaks. Just monks who've been doing this for years, some for decades. Some of them never left this mountain, and the weird part? You don't feel judged. Not for your crooked posture, not for your racing thoughts, not for still secretly fantasizing about hot noodles and a pillow thicker than a folded rag. Here's the historical meat for this round. In the 1100s, Korean Seon monasteries were undergoing a quiet revolution. The balance of power was shifting from large court-sponsored temples toward more remote mountain centers. These forest temples became crucibles for self-discipline, places where doctrinal debates were tossed aside in favor of lived experience. The idea wasn't to learn Buddhism, it was to become it. And here's your quirky morsel. In some traditions, monks would meditate so long that calluses formed on their knees. Others tied their robes in special knots that would dig into their flesh if they started to slump, as a kind of physical alarm. In one legend, a monk stitched a single bell into his robe hem. If it jingled, he knew his posture was failing. If it didn't, he was a rock. Historians still argue whether the intensity of these practices was consistent across temples. Some say forest monasteries were universally harsh and ascetic. Others suggest some were more relaxed, even playful, especially in the winter months when food was scarce, and meditation was naturally harder to maintain. You won't get a definitive answer from the monks here. They're not interested in arguing. They're too busy being quiet. You try to follow them. Back on the mat, your thoughts are quieter now. Not silent but manageable, like a radio turned to a whisper. You notice when they appear. You notice when they drift away. And in between, there's a space. A strange, beautiful space. You don't know how long you sit. Long enough to forget you're trying. Long enough for your breath to become your whole world. Then a bell rings. Small, metallic, exact. Everyone bows. You bow too. But this time, you don't feel like you're copying them. You feel like you belong. The group stands and moves again. You follow them into a smaller room behind the hall. It's dim and warm. Floor cushions are set in a wide circle, and in the centre, a single candle. A senior monk enters and nods to the group. Then he sits. Everyone follows. This is a Dharma talk, but not in the TED Talk sense. No stage, no microphone, no booming voice telling you how to optimize your soul. Just a monk speaking softly, slowly, often in metaphors that seem like riddles until you think about them for 2 hours and realize they were laser precise. Tonight's lesson, if you can call it that, is about emptiness. He doesn't define it. He just describes it, like a house with no furniture, a river without a name, a breath that no longer feels like yours or anyone's. He speaks maybe 3 sentences, then stops. No one fills the silence. You want to. You want to say, wait, what does that mean? Or, can you explain that part about the mirror and the firefly? But you don't. You let it hang. You sit with it. And slowly it seeps in. Maybe understanding isn't the point. Maybe sitting with the not knowing is the whole thing. Eventually the candle is snuffed. The room darkens. You bow again. And now comes something new. Free meditation. You're told, silently through gesture and rhythm, that you can go anywhere on the temple grounds. Find a place, sit, stand, walk. Lie down under a tree if you want. Just don't speak. Just don't leave. You choose the small stone bench near the outer wall. The sun is low again, golden and long. The light makes the dust in the air look like fireflies. You sit. No instruction. No app. Just you. And finally, silence that feels like home. You notice your breath again. And maybe for the first time, it feels like something you trust. You remain on the stone bench, the sun slowly melting into the forest beyond the wall. Its golden light stretches long, casting the pine shadows across the courtyard like fingers reaching inward. The breeze settles, birds quiet down. Even the bees seem to sense it's time to go still. You breathe, not the kind of breath you force, Just the breath that happens. In, out, a wind of your own. Then, just as the light begins to blue, a bell chimes. Not a loud one. Not the grand bell in the tower. This one is smaller, more refined, precise, like a whispered sentence with no wasted syllables. You stand, not because anyone says to, but because your body knows what to do now. You're becoming part of the rhythm. One bell, one body. It's weirdly comforting. You follow the other monks to the side hall again, where a simple meal is waiting. It's almost identical to breakfast. A little barley, a little broth. A side of fermented radish that could probably be used to etch stone. But this time, you eat it without complaint. Without narrative. You're not judging it. You're not fantasizing about fries. You're just chewing. And here's the wild part. It actually tastes like something now. Not much, but you can feel the grain, the texture, the slight nutty edge of the barley. The broth warms your insides in a way it didn't before. And the radish, well, it still tastes like a dare. But you eat it anyway. Monks aren't talking, of course, but there's communication happening. Bowing before the meal, slight nods. The shared rhythm of the bowls. Even how you stack your dishes is part of the conversation. No waste, no noise, no ego. This meal, like the others, ends with the baogongyang ritual. Hot water poured into the bowl, swirled to collect leftovers, then drunk like tea. You do it better this time. No sloshing, no clumsy grip. You might even pass for someone who belongs here, at least from a distance. Here's your historical nugget for tonight. Monastic meals were carefully designed to cultivate mindfulness. Not just because monks wanted to live simply, but because they believed every act was a chance for awakening. Washing a bowl was as sacred as reciting a sutra. The temple was not a retreat from life. It was life, distilled. And your quirky bite of trivia? In some temples, meals were eaten so silently and precisely that monks developed elaborate hand signals for requests. A flick of the fingers meant more water. A raised thumb meant a utensil was missing. In one record, a novice accidentally signed for a toilet break and was served a second helping instead. He didn't make that mistake again. Historians still debate whether these rituals were uniform across regions. Some temples were more relaxed, especially in the warmer southern provinces, while others, especially high mountain temples, insisted on stricter forms, seeing hardship as a gate to deeper insight. You, clearly, have entered one of the stricter gates. After dinner, there's a short break. Not for lounging, of course, for silent reflection. You walk back toward the bamboo grove. The air is cooler now, thinner. Every breath pulls in the scent of wood smoke and cold stone. The sky overhead is shifting into deep indigo, stars beginning to blink awake. The moon is rising, full, pale, and impossibly calm. You think of the city lights back home, where stars are just rumours. Here, the sky looks like it remembers things. You sit on a stone under the tallest stalks and stare up. Silence this deep doesn't feel empty anymore. It feels alive. A bird rustles in the branches. You don't startle. A beetle clicks by your foot. You don't move. You're becoming fluent in stillness. Then, a sound. Not natural. Not a bell. Footsteps. You look over and see him again, the silent monk. He's young but not new. There's a stillness in his face that unnerves you. He doesn't smile. He doesn't frown. He just is. He sits across from you. Not close, but close enough. And you both just sit. You try not to look, but you sneak a glance. His posture is perfect. His breathing slow. His hands rest lightly, gently on his knees. And his eyes are open. He's watching. Not you exactly. Just everything. You feel your own spine straighten without meaning to. What is he thinking? Does he think you're ridiculous? Or maybe, just maybe, he's not thinking at all. You try to match him. Not out of competition, but curiosity. Can you sit like that? Can you just be like that? 10 minutes pass, or maybe 20. The forest ticks on. He finally stands, bows, and leaves. No words, no messages. But somehow it feels like he told you everything. You stay a little longer. You don't need a bell to keep you here. And when you finally rise, it's slow, natural. Your body remembers. The stars are bright now. So many they make you feel small, but not in a bad way. Small like a raindrop in a wide, calm lake. You walk back to your cell, no candle in hand. You don't need one. The moonlight is enough. You can feel the floorboards now without seeing them. Each one has a voice underfoot. Inside, your mat is waiting. So is the night. You lie down, not to sleep, but just to be still. The room is dark, save for the faint blue glow slipping through the rice paper wall. You lie on your mat, arms tucked in, blanket drawn to your chest like a fragile armour. You're not quite awake, not quite asleep. Somewhere in between. A twilight of the mind, and then it returns. The silence. Not the friendly kind. The kind that settles on you, like a weight, like a fog that knows your name. You start to wonder if it's always been there, waiting, watching. The monks are asleep, you think. But not all of them. Because somewhere in the next room, or maybe just outside your thin paper wall, someone is breathing, slowly, deliberately. You can hear it. It isn't loud, but it's too intentional to ignore. You close your eyes, hoping it fades. It doesn't. It grows. Not in volume, but in presence. You can feel the breath as if it's synced with yours. Inhale, pause, exhale. You sit up, slowly. There's no sound of movement, no footsteps. But you know someone is there, not threatening, just observing. Like the forest has leaned a little too close, you lie back down, turn to your side, face the wall, still breathing. It finally fades after what feels like an hour. You're left with your heartbeat thudding against the mat and a creeping sense that this place has more eyes than monks. Here's your history snack. Many Korean Seon temples, especially those built into forests, blended Buddhism with older animistic traditions. Spirits of the mountain, ghosts of ancestors, even lingering echoes of former monks were often acknowledged, though rarely discussed. Silence wasn't just discipline, it was a form of respect, or fear. And your quirky tidbit, some temples were rumoured to be haunted by monks who had failed their spiritual training. Not in a dramatic chains-rattling way, but through subtle signs. Unopened doors found wide open, incense burned without lighting, the faint sound of sandals shuffling where no one walked. Historians still argue whether these stories were symbolic, representations of inner struggle, or if temples truly believed in haunted spaces. The truth probably lies somewhere in between. After all, a monastery isn't just a place. It's a pressure chamber for the soul, and sometimes souls crack. You finally drift off, not into restful sleep, but into something quieter, a holding pattern of breath and thought. You don't dream, or if you do, you can't remember. When you wake again, it's still dark, but there's movement. Not bells this time, bodies. The silent rustle of robes, the gentle creak of floorboards, a monk's cough, short and dry. You rise, your knees ache, your shoulders are tight, but your mind, oddly, feels clear. You walk out into the hall. No one speaks, but everyone's awake. The temple is stirring like a great wooden beast. You catch sight of the young monk again, the one with the unreadable eyes. He passes without looking at you, or maybe he does. It's hard to tell in this light. You follow the group outside. The air is colder now, not biting but serious, the kind of cold that makes you aware of every inch of your skin. They head toward the bell tower, and this time you don't just follow. You've been assigned. Tonight you are the bell keeper. You didn't ask for this role, but a novice handed you the rope earlier, thin, frayed and threaded with tradition. It's your job to pull it, not once, not twice. Exactly when the moment calls, except you have no clock, no hourglass, no sundial, no monk whispering, "Now, my child." You're meant to feel it. The bell itself is beautiful. Bronze, tall as a person, with carved symbols around its rim. A dragon winds across the top, its mouth open in a permanent silent roar. You step beside it. The striker is a long, suspended wooden beam, almost like a battering ram, hanging by thick ropes. You place your hand on it and wait. The monks are gathering in the courtyard below, one by one, silent, their grey robes almost glowing in the moonlight. Your heartbeat is suddenly the loudest thing in Korea. This bell isn't just for noise. It marks the shift from night to devotion. It begins the ritual. It echoes through valley and memory, and if you strike it wrong, too early, too late, too loud, you don't just embarrass yourself. You interrupt time. You inhale, you exhale, you pull. The beam swings, and the bell sings. A deep, perfect tone rolls out across the pines like a wave made of thunder and honey. The monks bow their heads. A crow startles from a branch and vanishes into the dark. You did it. You breathe again. And then, another chime, this time from the smaller temple bell below. The rhythm continues. Meditation begins again. You pass the rope back to the novice with the quietest nod of your life. You're nobody here, and somehow that feels okay. You drift back to your cell. The forest doesn't seem quite as strange now, still wild, but not unkind. You lie down once more, and this time, when you close your eyes, the silence is yours. Dawn rises like breath on a mirror, soft, slow, barely visible at first. A pale blush smears across the eastern sky, casting silver over the tiled roofs and making the dew on every blade of grass glisten like tiny prayer beads. You sit up on your mat before the next bell even rings. Your body moves more easily now. It still aches, sure, but the kind of ache that's earned, not resented. A soreness that says, you're doing it. You roll your shoulders, stretch your back, pull on your robe. You no longer fumble with the fabric like before. It wraps around you with ease, not because the robe has changed. You have. Your hands are steadier, your mind less frantic. You step into the morning. The air is sharp and clean, carrying the scent of pine sap, old stone, and something faintly sweet. Perhaps a trace of incense still lingering from last night's final chant. It clings to everything here. Even the silence smells like reverence. You walk with the others, barefoot as always, toward the main hall. But today's meditation takes place not inside, but under the open sky. The monks are seated on straw mats in the courtyard facing east. The horizon glows. A single novice holds a small brass bowl. He lifts it, lets it sing. The sound rings out and you begin. Eyes half closed, back straight, knees rooted to the earth. This is sunrise zazen, and it's not just beautiful, it's brutal. Because now, more than ever, your mind wants to wander. It wants to name the colour of the sky. It wants to marvel at the way the light breaks across the mountain. It wants to whisper things like, you should remember this moment forever. But zazen doesn't care about poetry. Zazen asks you to let go. Inhale. Pause. Exhale. Again and again. You try. You fail. You try again. Here's your historical nugget. In many Goryeo-era monasteries, sunrise meditation wasn't optional. It was the anchor of the day. The moment when monks connected not just with themselves, but with the rhythm of nature. The point wasn't to romanticize the dawn, it was to witness it without grasping. And your odd little footnote for this section? Some monks used to shave their heads just before sunrise, believing it helped them greet the light with a clean mind. There's even record of one particularly intense monk who shaved his eyebrows too for full sensory humility. That trend, thankfully, did not catch on. Historians still argue whether these sunrise rituals were rigidly enforced or gently encouraged. Some texts suggest a softer approach in smaller temples where elderly monks or sick novices were excused. But the forest temples, the high ones, they rarely bent the schedule. If the sun could rise on time, so could you. You try again to let go. Your breath returns. The light on your face grows warmer, and then it happens. Not loudly, not dramatically, just suddenly. Your thoughts stop, only for a moment, but it's real. A pause, a space. You're not planning or remembering. You're not narrating your own experience. You're just here. The warmth of the sun on your cheek, the distant rustle of wind in the pines, the sensation of being entirely awake without needing to do anything about it. Then your knee spasms, and the moment breaks. Of course it does. You shift slightly. A monk nearby raises an eyebrow. You pretend it was intentional. The bell rings again. Once, twice. That's the end. You bow, and the monks rise together, like waves lifting off the shore. Now it's time for work. Again. Today, you're assigned to help with laundry. You think, finally, something easy. Oh, sweet fool. You're led to a narrow courtyard where garments hang from bamboo poles, stiff from last night's frost. Two novices kneel beside a massive stone basin filled with icy water. You're handed a bar of soap, a wooden board, and the most sarcastic smile a monk can give without using his face. You kneel, Your knees complain. Your fingers go numb, you scrub anyway. The soap is soft and fragrant, made from ash and pine oil. It smells like every part of this mountain, clean, earthy, and deeply unimpressed with you. The robes you scrub are heavy and coarse, holding water like guilt. You beat them against the stone, rinse, twist, repeat. Over and over, this is laundry as penance. You try to find a rhythm, your back aches, your elbows slip, but your thoughts slow. Your breath steadies. The repetition becomes a kind of prayer, a motion mantra. Here's the thing, these robes aren't just clothes, they're symbols, uniforms of humility. Every fold, every stitch, every spot of dirt is a mirror of the self. You're not cleaning cloth, you're cleaning mind. Here's a quirky historical wash cycle for you. Some monks believed that washing robes should be done only with mountain-fed water, never from wells. Why? Because well water was stagnant, and stagnation bred ego. Mountain water flowed. Flow meant freedom. Historians still debate whether laundry was rotated on a strict weekly cycle or done as needed. One scroll from the Goryeo period records a monk who insisted on washing his robe daily, until a senior scolded him for being too attached to appearance. The balance between cleanliness and vanity? Still tricky. You rinse one final robe, wring it out, hang it carefully on the line. Your hands are red and trembling, but your mind, surprisingly still. You look at your fingers, at the faint blue of your nails, at the water dripping from your sleeves, and then you laugh. Quietly, just a puff of air through your nose, but still. A monk nearby turns, raises one eyebrow. You bow, very deeply. He bows back, even deeper. And in that tiny exchange, the silence softens, just a little. The robes drip quietly behind you, a rhythm of their own, plip, plip, plip into the frost-hardened soil. You stretch your back, joints crackling like old floorboards, and straighten from the washing basin. A novice gestures toward the upper courtyard. No words, just a flick of the hand. You bow, because that's the only form of "okay, got it" here, and follow him uphill, soles pressing wetly against the path. The courtyard is silent. Again, of course, but there's a tension in the air now, like the moment before a curtain rises. Monks are kneeling in rows. You recognize many of them. Some you don't. A few look like they haven't moved since the last time you blinked. Then he appears. The abbot. You've heard him mentioned in whispers, though no one actually whispers here. It's more a shared stillness, a deferential hush that ripples outward whenever his name passes through a glance. He moves like fog, pale robe, shaved head, hands folded just above the waist. His eyes barely register you as he steps onto the wooden platform. No throne, no cushion, just a raised mat and a small steaming bowl of tea. He sits, cross-legged, effortlessly, as though gravity is a myth to him. You sit too, lower than the rest. He doesn't speak. You wait. 10 full minutes pass, still no words, and then finally, 3. Just 3. He says, "Form is emptiness." Then he takes a sip of tea. Silence returns. That's it. That's the sermon. No explanation. No follow-up. No, "Hey guys, thanks for coming to my TED Talk." Just form is emptiness, and the clink of ceramic. Your brain flips through interpretations like a stressed-out librarian. What does it mean? Why only that? Was it a test? Is he messing with you? Probably not. Probably yes. This is what's called a hwadu, a Korean Zen riddle or statement designed to break your habitual thinking. The point isn't to solve it. The point is to let it chew a hole through the part of your brain that always needs meaning wrapped in a neat little bow. Historical background here. Goryeo-era Seon monks were known for their use of hwadu as a daily spiritual tool. They weren't intellectual puzzles, they were time bombs, a sentence that might detonate enlightenment. 2 weeks or 2 decades later. Quirky trivia for the day. Some masters were so committed to brevity that they'd give a single hwadu to a disciple and then refuse to speak to them for years. If the student solved it, great. If not, they'd just keep meditating with it in their skull like a splinter. Historians still debate whether form is emptiness came from Chinese Chan, Indian Madhyamaka philosophy, or a particularly poetic monk who forgot his script. Either way, it stuck, and now it's yours. The abbot finishes his tea. He bows once, Stands, leaves, no one follows. They stay kneeling, still absorbing the aftershock of 3 tiny words. You sit with it. Form is emptiness. You try not to analyze it. You try not to chase it, but it chases you, all the way down to your bones. Eventually the group disperses. You drift down a side path, still dazed. Your next task, tea duty. You're led to a small, quiet room. A single candle glows beside a clay teapot. You're alone. Your job? Prepare tea for the next visitor. Quietly, carefully, reverently. You boil water over a small brazier, the flames crackling like whispers. You rinse the cups, warm the pot, each movement deliberate, each breath steady. You're supposed to become the tea. That's what the monk said. Well, not said exactly. More like pantomimed with intense eye contact and a lot of eyebrows. The tea is green, bitter, alive. You pour it into a ceramic bowl and place it on the tray. The next monk enters. He bows. You bow. He sips. No one speaks. This is not a performance. This is presence. And suddenly you understand the weight of what you're doing. This isn't about the tea. It's about how not to rush. It's about noticing the warmth of the cup in your hand, the way the steam swirls before it vanishes, the sound of liquid moving from pot to bowl. It's about being here, without editing the moment. Here's a little-known fact. The Korean tea ceremony, or darye, dates back to this very period. It was practiced in temples long before it became a formal part of aristocratic life. Monks saw tea not as a luxury, but as a sacred companion to meditation, a brief, fragrant bridge between breath and silence. And here's your quirky corner. Some monks developed entire choreographies for serving tea, including how many degrees the wrist should rotate during the pour. One temple manuscript even includes a line that translates to, "If your tea splashes, so does your mind," which sounds about right. Historians still debate how structured the tea practice was in smaller, remote temples. Some claim it was deeply ritualized. Others argue it was simply a quiet, nourishing pause. Either way, you're in the middle of it now, holding a bowl of green liquid like it might contain the universe. And maybe it does. You bow. The monk finishes. He leaves. You remain. The candle flickers beside you. The coals hiss. And somewhere in the back of your mind, a sentence continues to echo. Form is emptiness. You don't understand it. But you also don't mind. The candle burns lower. The brazier's warmth is fading. You sit in the stillness after tea like someone who's just witnessed something sacred, but doesn't quite know what to do with the feeling. You should leave. Probably. But your legs won't move. Or maybe they just don't need to. You feel emptied. Not in a bad way. More like how a cup feels when it's finally rinsed clean. Still useful, but silent. Eventually a novice arrives. You bow. He doesn't speak. None of them ever do. But he gives you the universal look of, yes, you're due somewhere. You follow him past the bell tower, past the statue of the Bodhisattva wrapped in morning shadow, and toward the most mundane part of the monastery, the bathhouse. It's not what you'd expect. No steam, no soft towels, no relax and rejuvenate slogans carved into wood. It's a squat building made of stone and planks, with a single guttered pipe feeding icy spring water into a square tub. Today your task is cleaning it, by candlelight. You're handed a brush made of bundled reeds, worn smooth by decades of scrubbing. The floor is damp. The walls are coated in the faint sheen of lichen and years. You roll up your sleeves, begin scrubbing. At first it feels pointless. You're pushing cold water around a cold room with a cold brush, and no one is going to thank you for it. But that's the trick, isn't it? There is no you here. There's just the work, just the brush. Just the square of floor you're slowly revealing under layers of grime and thought. It takes a while, but you find the rhythm. Scrub, rinse, scrub, rinse. Your thoughts fade with each motion. Here's your historical lather. Monastic bathhouses were considered essential in Buddhist temples, not for comfort, but for purity, both spiritual and physical. Bathing was seen as a practice of mindfulness and humility. You cleaned the body to remind yourself that the body wasn't yours to begin with, and your odd little tidbit. In some Goryeo-era temples, bathhouse duty was reserved for the most junior monks as a test of ego. If you complained, you were deemed not yet ready for inner heat. But if you scrubbed without judgment, even when no one watched, you were said to be beginning to boil. A metaphor, of course, hopefully. Historians still argue whether bathhouse labour was symbolic or just practical. Some records show elaborate rituals tied to cleansing. Others suggest it was simply what had to be done to keep mould off the floor. Both can be true, and right now your wrinkled hands don't care, they're just here, scrubbing. You pause for a moment, stretch your back, look around. The room is almost glowing now, not from polish, from absence. There's nothing left but clean stone and silence. You step outside into the garden behind the bathhouse. A few monks are pruning trees with small curved blades. Not talking, just shaping. One nods at you. You bow back. There's a kinship here, built entirely on mutual silence and shared tasks. Then, another bell. You're not even surprised. Bells are like punctuation here. They tell you when to begin, when to stop, when to breathe differently. You're starting to feel their rhythm like a pulse in your chest. You follow it back to the main courtyard, chanting time. Everyone gathers in the temple hall. You kneel at the back. A novice hands you a prayer book, handwritten, bound in rough cloth. You open it and see a blur of characters that may as well be alien code. The page is old, ink faded in places, margins stained with candle wax. The chant begins. It's low, deep, a hum more than words, the kind of sound that begins in the chest and ends somewhere in the roof of your mouth. You try to follow. At first it's awkward. Your tongue doesn't know what to do, your voice cracks, but no one's watching you. They're not chanting at anything, they're just merging. The words aren't important. It's the sound, the breath, the fact that 50 voices become one note, one current. You get swept into it, and soon your voice is there too. Imperfect, but there. It feels ancient, like something your body remembers even if your mind doesn't. Here's the historical chorus. Buddhist chanting in medieval Korea wasn't always uniform. Different temples used different rhythms, melodies, even pronunciations. Some scholars argue that chanting itself was seen as a bridge between the seen and unseen, a kind of sonic offering to the invisible workings of the universe. And the quirky note for today? There are records of monks chanting so long that their lips blistered. One particularly zealous practitioner in the Goryeo period supposedly lost his voice for a month and was praised for burning with sound. Let's hope your vocal cords aren't quite so enthusiastic. Historians still debate whether chanting was considered more effective when understood or simply felt. Some argue that reciting without comprehension diluted the meaning. Others insisted the sound alone was enough to shape consciousness. You're too far in now to care. The chant grows louder. The hall vibrates. Your chest vibrates. You're no longer aware of your body, just the syllables spilling from your mouth in unison with 50 other people who also don't care if they're off-key. The bell chimes again. Everything stops. No applause, no bow, just silence, and a breath. And then, like smoke, everyone disperses. You close the prayer book, set it gently on the altar, stand. Your voice feels raw, but your mind, quiet, settled, not blank, just softened. You walk out into the evening light, the pine shadows stretching longer than you remembered. You've chanted, scrubbed, bowed, sat and served. And through it all, somehow, you've vanished a little, and in the space that's left behind, something peaceful. You thought the chanting would be the crescendo, the emotional peak of your monastic movie montage. But no, you've got another starring role to play, and this one involves timing, precise timing, without a watch, without a clock, just you, a giant bronze bell, and about 1,000 years of ritual judgment waiting to fall if you mess it up. Welcome to bell duty. Again. But this time, it's real bell duty. Not the polite, give it a tug when the stars align kind. This is the sunset bell. The big one. The resonant heart of the monastery that tells every monk, every bird, every ghost in the forest, day is done, prepare for the night watch. You've been summoned for this honour by a senior monk who gives you the most serious nod you've received in days. He gestures to the bell tower, hands you the thick rope, and steps back as if passing you a live wire. You look up. The bell is huge. It hangs from a wooden beam wrapped in ancient silk that's gone soft and grey with time. The striker is a horizontal log, worn smooth by centuries of identical movements. The air around it smells of oxidised metal, old prayers and pine pitch. Your palms sweat. You're supposed to feel the moment. Not estimate, not guess, just know, like how animals know when an earthquake is coming. So, You wait. The sun sinks lower, shadows reach across the courtyard. The monks begin to gather near the steps of the main hall, sitting, kneeling, some closing their eyes. They're waiting, but not for you, for the sound. One note, that's all it takes. You hold the rope, you inhale, you exhale, you pull. The striker swings. Thoo! The bell sings, low, rich, endless, like thunder wrapped in velvet, like the universe humming in its sleep. Heads bow, birds scatter. The sound rolls down the mountain like a slow avalanche of bronze. And for a moment, just one, you don't feel anxious or out of place or terrified of making a fool of yourself. You feel aligned. Here's the historical heartbeat. In many temples, the evening bell was more than a signal. It was a spiritual act, a way of calling all beings to wakefulness, even as the world fell into sleep. Some monks believed the vibrations reached the underworld. Others said it called the dead to remember their name. And your quirky snippet? There are records of bell keepers who became famous for their technique. One monk in particular, known only as One Breath Seon, was said to time his strike so perfectly that the echoes would fold over each other like waves. A travelling magistrate once called it the sound that made me forget my horse had diarrhea, which honestly is the highest praise a monk could hope for. Historians still argue whether bell ringing was considered a lowly job or a sacred one. Some temples gave the task to novices, others only to the most advanced practitioners. It depended on the lineage, the philosophy, and probably how many monks were willing to admit they couldn't tell time without a sundial. You return the rope to its hook. The courtyard is still, no applause, just deep collective stillness. You descend the steps of the tower, and as your bare feet touch the cool stones again, a strange thing happens. The monks bow to you. Not all at once, not dramatically, but a few, as you pass, lower their heads, acknowledging not your performance, but your presence. You bow back, trying not to grin. Now it's time for evening maintenance, a kind of spiritual cool-down. Tonight, you've been assigned to the candle rounds. You walk through the temple's smaller buildings with a single reed torch, extinguishing candles one by one. You do it slowly, with care, not because you're afraid of fire, though yes, still a healthy fear, but because this is part of the ritual. Darkness must arrive gently here. Each flame snuffs out with a whisper. Each room breathes deeper once it's dark. You step into the meditation hall, last candle. It flickers, trembling at the end of its wick. You stare at it. Let it burn a little longer. It seems reluctant. Then you pinch it out. Darkness folds in, and with it comes a coolness, like the room is exhaling. Here's your tiny insight for the evening. In many temples, light wasn't just utility. It was a symbol of mind. Lighting a candle was an offering. Extinguishing it was a return to source. The act was never just about visibility. It was about reverence. You weren't lighting for the eyes. You were lighting for the heart. And your historical footnote? Some temples were known to use exactly 108 candles each day, aligning with the 108 earthly desires in Buddhist cosmology, each flame a metaphor. Each extinguishing, a letting go. That's a lot of candles, and a lot of letting go. Historians still debate whether this exact number was universal or symbolic. In remote monasteries like yours, simplicity likely prevailed. But the spirit of the practice, the ritual of light and darkness, remained sacred. You finish the rounds. The monastery now glows only with moonlight and memory. You return to your cell, not quickly, not slowly, just in step. When you lie down on your mat, you don't flop or sigh or ache. You just rest. And for the first time, it doesn't feel like recovery. It feels like arrival. You wake to darkness, but not the kind that threatens. It's thick, still, full, but strangely soft, like a blanket stretched over the world. No bell this time, no assigned task. Just a deep pull in your chest that says, get up anyway. You move quietly. Your body, now familiar with the chill of morning stone, doesn't protest as much. The mat rolls up easily. The robe slides on like muscle memory. You no longer second-guess the motion of your hands. You no longer need to be told where to go. Because you want to go, you slip outside. The courtyard is empty, and yet it isn't. The whole place feels awake, though nothing stirs, as if the buildings themselves have breath. You walk slowly toward the meditation hall, not for instruction, not out of obligation, just because that's where the stillness leads. The doors are open. Candles flicker along the walls, tall and thin like shadows caught mid-thought. A few monks sit already, some in full lotus, others kneeling, all of them breathing like trees. You sit. No bell, no voice, just breath. And then chanting, but not lead chanting, not coordinated, just one voice, soft, low, from the far corner of the room, not loud enough to disrupt, just enough to set a tone. It spreads, not quickly, like moss. Another voice joins, then another. Soon it becomes a tide, no books, no page turns. Just memory. And you, sitting in the swell of it. You close your eyes, you don't know the words, but you don't need them. You feel them. The shape, the rise and fall, the vibration in the floorboards beneath your knees. This is Sorry Seon, the meditative chanting style unique to certain Korean temples. Somewhat rare, even in its time, but preserved in places like this. No formal structure, just spontaneous, heart-led recitation, often from memory, always from presence. Here's your historical gem. During the Goryeo dynasty, Buddhist chanting was seen not only as liturgical but medicinal. Monks believed that certain syllables properly pronounced could balance breath, calm the nerves, and sharpen attention. Even today, echoes of that philosophy linger in Seon, Korea's living temple chant tradition. And your oddball fact? Some temples designated one monk as the tonal root. His job was to sing the first note of any chant. If his pitch was off, the whole thing wobbled. In one recorded case, the same monk served as tonal root for 40 years without missing a note. They nicknamed him Steady Ox, a voice like a bell, and reportedly a laugh like a goat. Historians still debate how much improvisation was allowed in these early chants. Some scholars argue for strict melodic lines. Others suggest a free-form, jazz-like approach to syllabic delivery. Here, at least, it feels improvised, but deeply coherent. Like a river deciding where to flow. You find yourself humming along. Not loudly, not confidently, but honestly. It feels good, like your body has been waiting to make sound for days. Not noise, sound. And then, all at once, it ends. Not in a cut-off. It dissolves. One by one, the voices fall away until the room is candlelight and breath again. No one claps, but something deep inside you does. Afterwards, you step outside again. The sky is that pre-dawn purple, the moment before colour starts coming back into the world. You decide to take the long path around the outer wall. You walk slowly, no direction, just forward. The path curls toward a slope lined with young pine. You follow it up, cresting a small ridge you hadn't noticed before. And there, like a secret, the hermit's hut. It's barely more than a shack, no door, one wall open to the mountain. Inside, a mat, a stone lantern, a pile of twigs, no decoration, no comfort, just space. You don't go in, but you bow. Something about this place feels sacred. Not because of what it is, but because of what it isn't. Here's your historical deep dive. In the Korean Seon tradition, hermitage practice, known as dongjeng, was seen as a stage of deep devotion. Monks would retreat into isolated huts, sometimes for years, practicing alone with no visitors, no guidance, and almost no food. The idea was to confront the mind in its rawest state, and your offbeat detail? Some temples would bury jars of fermented radish near the hermitages, just in case the monk refused all outside contact. One scroll describes a hermit who communicated solely by rearranging stones outside his hut. His last message, according to law, was a perfect circle. Historians still debate whether these recluses were revered or gently pitied by the rest of the Sangha. Some say they were seen as enlightened. Others believe they were simply the most stubborn monks of the lot, probably both. You sit just outside the hut, not intruding, just resting. The wind up here is thinner. You can see the monastery below, the curved roofs, the flicker of morning lanterns, the slow, deliberate movement of the first kitchen monks. And above it all the sky lightens. You breathe, and something in you unclenches. Not dramatically, not all at once. Just a quiet loosening of the grip you didn't realise you'd had on yourself. The sun finally breaches the ridge, an orange sliver that sends long, slanted light across the treetops. The hermit's hut behind you glows on one side, still shadowed on the other, like even the mountain can't quite decide whether to wake or not. You start walking back. The gravel path crunches underfoot. You pass a sleeping crow, wings fluffed, head tucked beneath one inky fold. Even the birds take breaks here. You've been in this monastery for what? 2 days? 3? Time has lost its outline. You haven't checked a clock in what feels like forever. You're no longer asking, what time is it? But rather, what is now asking of me? You arrive in the outer courtyard just as the first wave of chores is ending. Monks rise from their tasks. Some have straw in their hair, others carry brooms. One walks by with a bundle of wet wood, and you swear his footsteps don't even leave prints. A novice gestures for you to follow. You're not surprised, you don't even resist, you just go. This time, it's toward the kitchen. A long, narrow building with low ceilings. Always warm, always slightly smoky. You enter and feel the shift instantly. This is the beating heart of the monastery. No one talks, but things move here. Rice steaming, barley roasting, radishes soaking in salted water. It's calm but not slow. You're handed a cloth and led to the cutting table. A monk slices daikon with hypnotic precision, each piece identical to the last. You're given a knife and a small mountain of scallions. You begin chopping, badly, too big, then too small, then crooked. Then one rolls off the board and disappears under a shelf. You look up, expecting judgment. But the monk beside you just keeps slicing. No one corrects you. Because eventually the rhythm finds you. Slice, slide, wipe, breathe. Your breath matches the motion. The scallions surrender without complaint. The green stains your fingers. The smell clings. You lose track of the pile. You just keep going. This is Samu. Work practice, not a task, not a chore, a moving meditation. Every movement is a continuation of zazen. Every act, a chance to dissolve the self. Here's the historical seasoning. Seon temples were unique in how they blurred the line between meditation and labour. In many schools, work was a distraction from study. But in Seon, labour was the study. Chopping vegetables could be as holy as copying scripture, especially if you were awake to it. And your quirky morsel. One monastery recorded an entire kitchen staff that vowed not to speak or make eye contact for 5 years straight. Their dishes became legendary, not for taste, but for the way they seemed to nourish more than the body. Food that bows, one traveller wrote in his diary. I've never eaten something so quiet. Historians still argue whether this reverence for work developed organically or was a response to stricter doctrinal splits with neighbouring traditions. Some say it was an evolution, others claim it was a rebellion. Either way, it baked humility into every meal. Eventually the scallions are done, you wipe your blade. Bow. Wash your hands in the basin. The soap is gritty, the water icy. You don't flinch anymore. The monk beside you nods once. You nod back. No words, just mutual acknowledgement that something passed between you. After the kitchen, you're allowed a short break. But no one naps here. No one scrolls through anything. They sit, walk, sweep, stare at stones. You find a corner under the long eaves of the main hall and lower yourself down. The wind rustles the pines like an old hymn. You notice that even the silence has textures. There's sharp silence, the kind that startles, and soft silence, the kind that folds you up inside it. This one, it's soft. You think about the past few days, the bowing, the aching knees, the chanting, the bell, the radish that tried to end you, the silence that wouldn't let go. And now, you feel different. Not in a movie transformation sort of way. No glow, no internal monologue swelling with orchestral music. Just a kind of looseness. Like the tightly coiled springs in your mind have started to unwind. And then something shifts. It's small, but unmistakable. A sound. Not birds, not monks, not the wind. A whisper. You don't know where it comes from. Maybe it wasn't even sound. Maybe it was just a knowing that dropped gently into your chest. Something that says, you're not alone here. You sit with it. No fear, no analysis, just presence. Here's your strange but true tidbit. In certain mountain monasteries, monks often reported hearing things during long stretches of silence. Bells that hadn't rung, footsteps where no one walked, whispers that felt like teachings rather than words. Some claimed it was the forest, others the old teachers who never left. You don't tell anyone, because there's nothing to explain, just a silence that now seems full of someone else's memory. You rise, walk slowly toward the rear garden, and there, under the lowest branch of a bent pine, a monk is waiting. Not for you, but for the bell, because it's almost time to chant again. You nod, and the monk nods back, and though not a single word is spoken, you feel unmistakably heard. The bell rings again, soft and distant, as if even it has become shy in this deepening quiet. You and the monk walk slowly, side by side, not in lockstep but in something gentler. Like your footsteps are learning each other. He doesn't speak. You don't expect him to. The moment doesn't need fixing. You reach the chanting hall. It's nearly dusk now. The lanterns glow amber behind rice paper panels, and smoke from a fresh coil of incense curls upward like a lazy thought. You bow at the threshold and enter. Tonight's chant begins with the Heart Sutra. You've seen the text before, countless brushstrokes in black ink across a long unfolding scroll. You don't know it by heart, but you remember fragments. Form is emptiness. Emptiness is form. The words circle back. You sit near the rear again, close enough to hear, far enough to disappear. The chant begins with a single, unhurried voice. Then another joins. Then the room becomes breath and syllable again. You close your eyes. This time you don't try to follow. You just listen. To the monks, to the breath between lines, to the silence that clings to the walls like mist, and to something else too, something you didn't notice before, a sound, a rhythm. From the far corner of the room, a barely audible wheeze, a breath caught at the end of an exhale. You open your eyes. It's an old monk. You hadn't seen him before. His face is a map of folds and years. His eyes are closed. His lips move slowly, deliberately, as if the words are coming from a deeper place than language. He isn't following the chant. He's becoming it. You watch him, entranced. He rocks gently as he speaks, like his body is a bowl carrying just enough sound to keep from spilling. And that's when you notice. Everyone else has slowed slightly. Their rhythm adapts to his. They let him lead without looking, just listening, just trusting. He finishes the verse, then stills, and the chant dissolves into that enormous quiet again. Everyone bows. You bow. The old monk opens his eyes and glances your way, just briefly. Not a smile, not quite. More like a knowing, a message without shape. You return to your feet and file out with the others. The sky has darkened. The courtyard is painted in navy blue and candlelight. You start walking toward your cell, but something stops you. A small sound, a giggle. It's quick, suppressed. From behind one of the rear buildings, not malicious, just human. You step quietly around the corner, and you see them. 2 novices, maybe 13, maybe 15, sitting cross-legged beside a pile of firewood, trying very hard to look serious. But one of them just cracked, and the other is failing to recover. They notice you. Their eyes widen. You freeze. They look terrified. But instead of scolding or raising a brow or turning silently away, you do something bold. You smile. A real one. Just a flicker. They blink. Then, one of them smiles back. It's hesitant, half-formed, like it hasn't had much practice. The other returns to stone-faced form fast. But for a second, that corner of the monastery glows with something rare. Joy. You walk away without a word, because you don't need one. Here's a hidden gem for you. Laughter in monasteries wasn't forbidden, but it was often treated like fire. Useful, powerful, but requiring careful control. Some temples embraced it sparingly, allowing occasional laughing days to reset the mind. Others feared it could shatter the delicate stillness built by silence, and your quirky fact. One legendary monk, nicknamed Half Smile by his students, was known to smirk only during rice washing. They said he believed joy could be stirred into food. His disciples swore they could taste it. Historians still debate whether laughter was encouraged or repressed across different temples. Some records suggest that senior monks saw it as ego leakage. Others argued it was proof of awakening. One particularly poetic scroll states, "The enlightened man laughs, but not always out loud. Back in your cell, you sit on your mat. Not to lie down, not to sleep, just to sit. You think about the smile, the chant, the old monk's breath, the giggle beside the firewood. You think, no, you feel that all of it belongs, that maybe even joy when it's quiet, when it's offered rather than taken, is part of the practice. You fold your hands in your lap, and for the first time, you smile to no one, just because. The candlelight in your cell flickers, casting soft waves across the wall. You sit cross-legged on the mat, not moving, not meditating in the formal sense, just letting the moment settle. The smile still lingers at the edge of your lips, not giddy, not performative, just there, gentle. You breathe in, hold, exhale. You can feel the warmth of the firewood pile a courtyard away, the hush of the old monk's chant, the hidden laughter that somehow felt like a gift. There's a knock, soft, not on your paper door but more like a brush, bare knuckles tapping wood without the intent to interrupt. You rise, open the panel. A novice is there, holding a bundle in his arms. He bows, hands it to you. It's a scroll, fresh parchment, blank, rolled tight, secured with a string of woven grass. Beside it, a brush, a tiny clay pot of ink. You bow instinctively. He bows deeper, then he vanishes down the hall like he was never there. You unroll the scroll in your lap. There are no instructions, but you already know what this is. This is suseok, the practice of copying sacred texts again. But this time, it's not an assigned scripture. There are no pages to match, no layout to follow. This scroll is for your own lines, and you don't even need to write words. You sit back down, open the ink. The scent rises immediately, earthy, mineral, faintly metallic, like a smell from the bottom of a forgotten well. You dip the brush, touch it to the page, nothing. Then, slowly, one stroke, then another. You're not writing letters, you're letting your hand move the way your breath does. Curves, sharp lines, repeats, not calligraphy, not art, just presence. Here's your historical nugget. While sutra copying was common, many forest monasteries also embraced expressive transcription, a way of capturing meditative states through abstract brushwork. These weren't meant for display. In fact, they were often burned afterward as offerings to impermanence. And your curious detail? There's a preserved scrap of parchment in a remote Korean archive bearing only a single brushstroke repeated 108 times. Slightly different each time. Some scholars say it was a chant written in silence. Others think the monk was trying to perfect a single emotion. One theory suggests it was a way to mark time, a kind of monastic heartbeat. Historians still debate whether these scrolls were exercises in ego or ego death. Some called them personal expressions of the awakened mind. Others said they were distractions, practice that pulled the monk away from the body, not into it. You keep going, brush after brush, stroke after stroke. The ink dries fast in the cool night air. The scroll begins to curl slightly at the edges, but you don't mind. It adds character and imperfection. You pause, look down. The page isn't beautiful, it's not supposed to be, but it feels like you. The door opens again. No knock this time. A monk enters quietly, he doesn't speak. He just gestures for you to bring the scroll, you gather it. Follow him down a narrow side corridor you've never been through before. It leads behind the main hall, past the storerooms, past the water basins, into a small chamber open to the night sky. At the centre, a stone basin. The monk gestures. You step forward. It takes a moment to understand. This is not where you store the scroll. This is where you release it. You place it gently into the basin. A candle flickers nearby. The monk lights the edge of the scroll. The flame catches quickly. The parchment curls, the ink bubbles. Your strokes dissolve into smoke. You bow. The monk bows too. Then, just as softly as he arrived, he's gone. You stand there alone. The air smells like ash and pine. Above, stars scatter wildly across the black. No moon tonight. Just the vast, ink-dark sky that seems to echo everything you've just let go of. You return to your room, hands still faintly stained. You sit, and this time the silence feels different again. Not weightless, not heavy, but whole, complete. Like something inside you has returned to where it came from, and was welcomed home. The night stretches wide across the mountains. The stars outside your rice paper window are steady now, no flickering, no haze. Just pinpricks of permanence in a world that otherwise shifts beneath your feet. You lie awake, but not restlessly. The mat beneath you is still thin, the air still cold. But somehow, both feel like friends now, reliable, grounding. There's no bell tonight, but you rise anyway. Your body knows the way. Feet glide over the wooden floor, past the low beams, past the moonlit wall where shadows dance behind bamboo. You've stopped trying to understand why you move. You just move. You drift into the main hall once more. No monks this time. Just one item waiting for you at the centre of the room. A tea set, ceramic, pale green celadon, minimal, elegant, and unmistakably old. You bow to it and begin. This is not the tea of earlier days, the one in the courtyard shared with monks by necessity. This is dairy, the Korean tea ceremony, not performed for show, not even always for company. Sometimes it's done in solitude. You boil the water slowly, the flame whispering beneath the kettle. You prepare the pot, warming it with practiced hands. Scoop in the crushed leaves, not measured by spoon, but by memory. You pour, swirl, wait. It's all deliberate, timed not by clock, but breath. You pour the tea into a tiny bowl, hold it between your palms, and drink. It's slightly bitter, slightly grassy. It has no sugar, no milk, no spice. And yet, it contains everything. Here's your historical leaf. Korean tea culture reached a quiet peak during the Goryeo period, especially among monks who used it not as refreshment but as a meditative anchor. The whole point was stillness, a single act done fully. Tea was considered the bridge between mind and matter, boiled mindfulness, and your delightful little detail. Some monks were so attuned to their tea that they gave it names based on the sensation it left in the body. Moon behind mist, ink on silk. One scroll mentions a cup described as like breathing next to a waterfall in winter, which, come to think of it, is exactly what this one tastes like. Historians still discuss whether tea was ritualized equally across all monasteries or if some allowed for a more casual approach. Some documents suggest highly formal sequences. Others imply that one monk with a good kettle was all you needed. What's agreed on is this. The tea was never just tea. You finish your second bowl, then a third. You pour the last for an empty space across from you. You bow to it. You drink that one too. Not because you're lonely, but because something about the moment feels shared. With who? Maybe the tea, maybe the forest, maybe the you that's starting to melt away under all this silence. You clean the bowl, dry the pot, return it to its tray with reverence. There's something calming about placing each item exactly where it belongs. Like maybe, tonight, you belong too. You step outside. The moon has returned, barely, a sliver above the treetops, pale as memory. You walk slowly to the outer wall, where you once watched the stars from the stone bench. You find your way there without thinking. But someone is already there. The silent monk. The one who never speaks, but always seems to know exactly when to appear. He's seated on the stone, back straight, hands resting lightly on his knees, eyes open. He looks at you, then gestures, just once, with his hand. Sit. You do. The bench is cold, but not unwelcoming. You both stare out at the pines below. The breeze is light tonight. Not the whispering wind from before, but something calmer, like the forest itself is waiting. And then he does something you've never seen him do. He speaks. Only one word. In a voice so quiet you almost doubt it was real. He says, "Stay." Just that. No context, no instruction, no smile. He closes his eyes again, and doesn't speak again. You sit beside him. Minutes pass, maybe an hour. You don't move, because for the first time, you don't want to go anywhere else. Here's a final bit of historical shadow. The word Seon, from which Korean Zen Buddhism gets its name, comes from the Sanskrit dhyana, meaning meditative absorption. It's not about answers. It's about being so fully present that the need for questions dissolves. Sometimes just staying is the practice, and your quiet trivia for the night? A few temples still preserve benches known as the sitting stone of no instruction. Monks would visit them only when nothing else worked. No chants, no koans, no rituals. Just sitting, with nothing to fix. Historians still debate whether these were assigned or simply discovered by those who needed them. Some say the benches taught more than any master. Others believe they were just quiet places with a good view. Either way, you found one. You stay. And in the space where thoughts used to swarm, There is nothing now, and everything. The morning light creeps in slower today. Like even the sun doesn't want to disturb what the night made sacred. You're still on the bench. You never fell asleep. Not really. You drifted, floated, existed somewhere between breath and breeze. Your back is stiff, your legs tingling, but your mind feels clear, as if someone's wiped fog from a mirror that was always there, just smudged. The silent monk is gone. You don't know when he left. It doesn't matter. He came, he stayed, he spoke. That was enough. You walk down the hill slowly. The world is soft around the edges. The birds chirp again. Nothing unusual about that, but you hear space between their calls now. Rhythm, balance. You can almost feel the sound touching the trees. Back in the courtyard, the monastery is already awake. Monks walk in single file to the side hall for the morning gruel. You blend in without being told. No hesitation, no confusion, just flow. You take your place. Kneel. The rice is warm. The broth is thinner than usual. Your hands are steadier. The monk beside you hands you a folded cloth. A gesture, a knowing. It's time. Packing. You return to your room, if you can even call it that. The mat, the blanket, the corner of a wall where you once stared, wondering what you were doing here. It's all been part of the unwinding. There's nothing to fold, nothing to carry. Your robes are returned to the basket outside the storeroom. A novice gives you your old clothes, creased, slightly musty, and somehow foreign now. You change back into them like putting on a version of yourself that doesn't quite fit anymore. You bow to the novice. He bows lower. And just like that, your time here is almost done. But not quite. A final bell calls you. Not to chant, not to eat, not to scrub a floor until you see your soul in it. This bell calls you to the parting, a closing ritual, rarely explained, never skipped. You're led to a side room you haven't seen before. Small, round, wooden. A circle of cushions on the floor, an altar in the centre, unlit candle, unmarked scroll, a bowl of smooth river stones. The monks gather silently. No one speaks. No one nods at you. But the circle widens to make room. You sit and wait. The abbot enters last. He's not carrying a scripture. He's holding a bowl of water. He sets it gently in the centre of the altar, next to the candle. Then he sits. There's a long silence. Then he lights the candle, dips a hand into the water, flicks it once, gently, into the flame. It hisses. The flame shivers, then calms. Everyone bows. You follow. That's it. No words. But the meaning, like everything else here, is carried in ritual. Water into fire, suffering into stillness, effort into release. Here's your final historical whisper. In many Korean monasteries, departure ceremonies were intentionally minimal. No speeches, no farewells, just symbolic gestures to acknowledge the transformation, however small, that occurred during the stay. Some temples used candles, others bells. One used a silent walk to the gate. But the principle was the same. Let the parting be as intentional as the arrival, and your closing curiosity. Some monks were known to leave behind a single object, a stone, a folded paper, a strand of hair, as a way of saying, I was here, but I'm not holding on. Most of these were cleaned away during daily chores, but once in a while, one was left in place for decades. You leave the round room. A novice waits at the main gate. He bows. You bow back. And then you walk. No procession, no words. Just the sound of your own feet on gravel. The forest watches, unchanged. The trees, those towering, indifferent judges, still stand, still whisper, but they feel less distant now. You cross the gate. You pause. And without knowing why, you whisper a thank you. To no one. To everything. You walk down the path. The same one that once felt narrow, intimidating, wrapped in fog and strange sound. Now it's just a path. You walk it like it's been waiting. You walk it like you are always coming back. You walk it knowing that nothing is ending, only continuing. The path winds gently down the mountain. No signs, no markers, just stone, moss, and earth damp with the night's condensation. You keep walking, each step a small goodbye whispered into the soil. The air smells like pine needles and beginnings. The monastery is behind you now, though it doesn't feel left. more like it folded itself back into the forest, disappearing the way only things made of breath and time can. You reach a small clearing where the trees thin and the valley below stretches out in layers of green and mist. Somewhere out there, a river glistens. You don't need to know its name. You pause, look back. The monastery is hidden. Nothing visible but a slope of trees and the faint curl of smoke from a chimney you can't quite see. You should keep moving, but your body chooses stillness. You sit on a rock warmed slightly by the morning sun. You listen. The birds are louder now. Your ears notice the difference, and you smile, not because it's over, but because you realize this never leaves you. You remember the kneeling, the chanting, the brushstroke that burned into ash, the whisper, "Stay." You did. And now, without a sound, you're ready to go. Here's your final historical echo. Korean Seon monks didn't always stay in one temple. Many walked for years between monasteries, travelling from teacher to teacher, from forest to coast, carrying only what they needed. The road was part of the training. Detachment in motion, insight in dust, and your last odd gem. There were reports of monks leaving temples with no destination, simply following the next bell they heard, some travelling over mountains just to sit at the edge of a stranger's field. Wherever you are, one text says, if you're awake, the temple continues. Historians still argue whether this kind of wandering monk called a nsu, or cloudwater, was common or idealized. Some saw them as rebels, others as the freest beings alive. You stand. The sun is higher now, slicing golden light through the canopy. You begin walking again. Downward, forward, outward. But you don't rush. You don't grip the experience in your mind, trying to trap it, preserve it, post it, or explain it. You let it echo, like a bell. The silence remains inside you. And it's not empty. It is form. It is you. Let's stay here a little longer. Don't get up just yet. Let your breath settle into the rhythm of the forest again, soft and deep. The way it did when the wind moved through pine needles like a voice that didn't need to speak. You've come a long way, from city thoughts and rushing minutes to empty bowls, folded mats, and the hush of 1,000 years pressed into wooden floors. You learned to sit when your legs screamed, to walk when your thoughts tried to run, to stay when everything in you wanted to escape. And in the stillness, you found something else, a quieter version of yourself, one that doesn't need to be explained or named, just known. Now, as you lie there, wherever you are, imagine the cool touch of stone under your fingers, the soft glow of a candle nearby, the taste of barley tea still lingering at the back of your tongue. You're not in a monastery anymore, but the silence came with you. It always does, so breathe with it. Let it surround you like a robe you didn't know you were wearing. No thoughts to fix, no past to chase, no future to plan. Just this, just now. And when you're ready, only when you're ready, let your eyes close. Let the silence keep you company. And if sleep finds you here, it will find you changed, 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 will find you changed.